another visitor. Stay a while. Stay forever.
How's it going, everybody? Today we are at my friend's house, and today we are showing off his Game & Watch collection, Game Boy collection, and his Virtual Boy. And I think you guys will enjoy this collection very much so make sure you like, subscribe, and before it gets too dark, let's look right now. Yes, just his Game & Watch collection. So he has also something super cool, and I'll show you that right now. Check this out.
This is the Game & Watch tabletop. There were only 4 different models created, and this is one of them. It's Popeye. What they did is they inverted the polarizer, I believe, which made it so everything in the background was black except for the sprites. So they colored in the sprites with color instead. So they basically reversed the Game & Watch's screen.
Super cool. And if we go down here, we can see the Blackjack and Donkey Kong Jr. Look at that, people. Isn't that neat? Oh, that's a good one right there.
Alright, well this is the Game & Watch Ball. It's part of the Silver series, the first 6 they created. It eventually has the Gold series, which is the 2nd generation. And, well, here's of course the box. It's not the official one because, well, they did a remake back in the 2000s, and this is what they made. The original ones are much harder to come by, but this is the 1st generation. Alright, well this is Mario Cement Factory. It is something they made later. These are the widescreen series. Yeah, well, these had a much larger screen that allowed for a lot more stuff. Every one of these is akin to a calculator screen. What they'd use is preset sprites to actually create these, instead of having to use something more like a liquid crystal display or something like that. And, well, eventually they transitioned to other things like the double screen ones that look a lot more like a DS. Well, these are the kind of double screen ones, really. These are what they had before DS's and everything, and this is actually the first system to ever have a D-pad. All Game & Watches were originally made by Gunpei Yokoi. He's the inventor of these and the Game Boy Color, and the Virtual Boy. This is the first, kind of really big transition they made, especially since it featured the D-pad. They originally wanted to use a joystick here, but, you couldn't really fit that into a foldable case. And how they fit Donkey Kong onto such a small thing is they used one, special level for it. And it's really cool. What they do is they have you go up here and eventually reach this little crane hook here. And that crane hook would usually have some latches on it, and that would allow Donkey Kong to drop from the girders that would appear here. It's a really fun way to make an arcade game on such a small system, and I just think that's kind of beautiful in its own right. Alright, well this came out in 1988. It is the Super Mario Bros. Game & Watch. It's pretty cool in its own right. You can kind of see the old Mario design right here. Instead of the weird brown mustache and everything, you kind of just have that. Or is it brown sideburns? I don't know. But either way, the really cool thing about this one is it has 8 levels. What they did is they'd have these normal side-scrolling levels, but also some top-down perspective bonus levels and stuff like that. And how they do that is they'd have a vertical grid made up of all these little lines. And that's how they created their obstacles. So they could kind of create their own side-scroller on such a small preset screen, and I think that's kind of cool. Well, this is the Game Boy. It came out in 1989. And, well, it's kind of the culmination of all Game & Watches, but a little bit better. What they did is, they transitioned over from a preset screen like a calculator to an 8-bit screen that actually just, kind of works like a TV screen, kind of. And what they did is, well, this came out in 1988, this came out in 1989, kind of shows the big transition.
And if you guys recognize that,
it comes from that. The D-pad was actually never, they never actually got the copyright for it. They decided, that it was kind of something that was useless, and Gunpei didn't really want to get the copyrights for it. So it became a universal way of easily kind of doing this.
yes. So, for any of you PlayStation 5 kids dog shitting on the retro video games, you have this to thank for your D-pads, for your Fortnite. So, screw you.
Alright, well here's the Game Boy Pocket. this is what came out after the Game Boy. It's pretty much the same thing, honestly, but it's a smaller, more compact one, and it's just kind of cool for its own right. They changed up the screen a little bit, as you can tell by kind of like the little plastic protector on front, but...
The one and only Game Boy Color, yes! Why this thing is so significant.
Well, it's kind of in the title. I mean, what's so revolutionary about it is that you can actually see the Game Boy. Originally on the Game Boy Pocket and Classic Game Boy, they would have this contrast display that would change the brightness of sorts. And they'd use that using polarizers. It's just, well, here you don't even need that because you can just see that well. A Game Boy Color is just so much easier to use and see, and it provides color to old Game Boy games. Though not a lot. They only had small amounts of preset color in the Game Boy cartridges that they could use for this. Well, what came next in the whole line of this all is the Game Boy Advance. This came right after the Game Boy Color. What's so special about this is, well, it was able to kind of work instead of with just the Super Nintendo, stuff like the GameCube. They actually added compatibility through up here usually. And, well, what they do is... What's so big about this is just kind of the 16-bit aspect of it. There's a lot better graphics to this, and it's much better in its own right, but it's still pretty hard to see. What you don't have is the front light and the back light that you could add into systems like these, because, well, it was either expensive or too hard at the time. But the next one will have something pretty special that kind of helps that out. Alright, well, what came after the Game Boy Advanced is the Game Boy Advanced SP. The really special thing about this guy is this. You can actually see on it. This is just such a revolutionary change, and you can turn it on and off for depending on the conditions you're in.
And I used to have one of these babies a couple of years ago, but I sold it at my local game store, and they only gave me $40 for it, so I kind of got scammed a little bit by them.
Still pretty spiteful, eh?
Only a little bit, but also... This was my very first handheld system that I ever owned, and I remember when I was like 2 or 3 years old, I got this Mission Impossible game, which also got me into the Commodore game, which, if you guys know the Commodore game, that was actually used in the intro for this video. Also, a very, very, very cool thing he has is the original Virtual Boy.
It's crazy. It needs 6 AA batteries for this thing to just work.
Doesn't get much cooler than that. And he has a full... Well, not the full library, but a
close to full.
Very, very good library.
Only like 15 more to go.
That's a very fun one right there. Mario Clash.
They released like 20 games in America. I have 3 of them boxed. The real cool thing about this guy is that it's kind of the first virtual reality headset of sorts. It has a similar effect to the 3DS system. And how they would do that is they'd have each 2 lenses kind of displacing it for a 3D effect. And most games weren't a virtual reality type of thing. What you kind of have is more of just 2D games with 3D aspects to them, like Wario Land. But you'd also get other things like Tolero Boxer.
Yes. And again, to you modern video game players, you have us retro video gamers to thank for the very, very first virtual headset, which you would not have your Oculus today. And that's what it looks like on the front. Very cool. Super, super cool. Well, I made it back home, and I really hope you guys enjoyed that video today. And guess what? I would also like to announce we have a new member in the Tough Nerd family. The guy that you just saw is joining the team. So we're finally starting to get the team together. And he wasn't in the original team, but he's a very good friend of mine, and he's done really good for me. And I think it would be absolutely awesome to have him to be a part of the team. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't stop collecting. I'll see you guys in the next one.